We'll got the live button. We're here Monday for our Ovadia Heart Health live stream, and really excited to have return guest Josh Espinoza with us here today, and we're gonna jump right into it. But we have first one housekeeping. Communication we need to address, and that is anything we talk about here today is not intended for personal medical advice. If you are interested in working with the Ovadia Heart Health team, please reach out to us at team@ifixhearts.com. And we'd love to talk to you about your personal medical issues. But that's not our intention today. I'm really excited. Welcome back, Josh. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's nice to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Great. I'm always excited about our return guests because we can go one step farther than what we did that first time. Lots to talk about. Well, it's January. You have the New Year's resolution craze. Maybe even many people what are we at week 3 here have already lost that motivation. And we want to talk about some strategies today for helping people with their fitness, their exercise, their overall longevity. But before we get into that conversation, how about letting our listeners know, Josh, a little bit more about what you're personally doing and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, my background is I've worked in health and fitness for going on 15 years now. Started out working in a clinical setting, and then I transitioned over to corporate wellness and fitness. Eventually, I got the passion to help people when they wanted to make a change in their life as opposed to when they had to make a change in the hospital setting. And that kind of led me to today. Ultimately, I have my own gym where I teach other trainers. I teach my own clients as well in person. And outside of that, when I'm not doing those things, I'm trying to talk to other people like today and get some resources out there, because I really believe that fitness and wellness shouldn't be a luxury item that's restricted to the few. And I think that it's something that gets lost in everything that we got going on in today's world.
Great. Nice to have a little bit of what I would call the cliff notes about your work. But it doesn't matter where you look these days. When we talk about longevity, you see muscle strength, right, as one of those key indicators. People know about, they know they need to get strong. But why do you think people fall off even though they really want to change?
Yeah. I've done this a long time now. I think people all the time, every year, a new comes and goes where they think this is going to be a year. I want to run a marathon, or I want to be strong. And ultimately, I question their motivation, their drive, because at the end of the day, I think really believe everyone wants to change. But when it comes down to it, they don't have the tools or the systems to that for the long term. They're trying to take life as it is and just force this new thing to it, and ultimately just and what we do, what we do at my video, what we train is try to figure out how to make those new systems that work for people in their daily life. Anyone listening today and thinking, "Oh, I fell off," or "I'm pretty close to falling off," you have to look at what is your life set up and how are things meant to be as easy as possible to continue, because ultimately, if it doesn't fit your lifestyle and if it's too hard to continue base, then you're not going to do something sustainable. And ultimately, that gets results in the long run.
I'm just going to jump in here a little bit. We're having just a little bit of broken up sound here. I'm hoping maybe it's only from my side. Oh, I see someone did say you're cutting out a little bit, Josh. So we just do a little regroup on the sound. But there are, lots of good little pieces in there. You talked a little bit about goals being too big or too intense, too rigid. Hopefully, as we get our sound going, if we can dive into that just a little bit more.
Yeah. How's it sound now?
I think we're better, at least from my side.
For you, if that's up. I mean, not. Let's.
We have a little bit of technical. Maybe you want to try and come back in. And one of the things we're talking about here today, there's so many avenues to speak about when it comes to getting your fitness program up and running, getting it into a place where one can be consistent. Something that we work on when we talk about the planning for it. Goals are a big part of it, but setting goals that allow for consistency. One of my mantras this last year has been turn your motivation into consistency. And I know you talk a lot about consistency through design. Could you, Josh, explain a little bit what does that mean?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you can. Yay, we got it.
An old commercial, huh? Yeah, I think. Sorry if I was cutting out, everybody. Yeah, at the end of the day, your motivation to change is real, but ultimately, if you don't design your life in a way that fits those goals and motivations, then it's going to be really hard to sustain them, and it's going to be really hard to start something new. So, in order to design whatever the new lifestyle it is, you have to sort of reverse engineer it and make it as easy as possible to do consistently. Because if it's not as easy as possible to do, then ultimately it's just going to fall by the wayside, because whether you're a parent or a spouse or any, you name it, right? All the hats you wear in a day, those things all still have to continue in the background. And if you don't have these systems in place, it's hard. It is hard. Our society does not make our lives easier to continue with the fitness routine. It makes our life easier to not do anything, right? Our life by design is to be sedentary. So ultimately thinking about how you structure your day, whether that's taking the stairs instead of the elevator, whether that's making sure every meal has vegetables in it, it takes some effort, and you can only change one thing at a time. That's what I would tell people, especially when they have really high motivations to change everything. It's pretty hard to do all at once.
And that's a great tip. I know the BJ Fogg is a world-renowned, I think he runs the psychology lab at Stanford. He works a lot on the behavior change with a lot of the Silicon Valley companies. And I think I heard of him speak a couple of times. He said, if you're wanting to make a new change, 1 to 2 minutes is really a great starting point. Start with something, especially, if you're trying to learn how to floss your teeth. He gives a funny story about flossing 1 or 2 teeth first and then slowly working up to doing the whole mouth. But it's a great point. I love, you've said times like the first step should almost be too easy. If you're thinking about, so we've got all kinds of people listening in. We got people who go to the gym regularly. We got people who work with trainers regularly. We have people listening who maybe are just thinking about what they should do. In your toolbox, let's talk about maybe first those people who are doing something regularly. What are maybe some things that you see people missing out, even though they're doing regular training right now? Are there some fundamental pieces, whether it's three-dimensional movement or not working on their balance? Are there any little insider tips that you see people are missing out on?
Yeah. Wow, where do we start? I think there's a lot of things going on. I think um, when you think about your fitness routine, everyone really focuses on like what type of routine they're doing, if it's 3 times a week or 5 times a week. And what I would tell them is that the best program for you is the one that you can do consistently, first off. So if we're consistent, great. Second, I would say before worrying about your fitness routine, then I would start looking at, are we sleeping enough? Are we having 7 to 8 hours of sleep in a day? Are we looking at our nutrition where we're having the right amounts of whole foods in a day? Because if we're having processed foods and all kinds of junk that our body doesn't really need, it's gonna kind of eliminate a lot of the work we're doing inside the gym. But on the flip side of that, for everyone that does have all those things nailed down, um, a lot of times in life, everybody trains the muscles that look good in the mirror, right? The up and down movements, and we're designed to really move in 3 dimensions, whether that's like rotating. If you think about sports and athletes, right, they're moving side to side, they're twisting, they're turning and lifting. And those are all movements that you don't see too commonly in a strength training program if you're using something you found on bodybuilding.com, or if you just pulled a workout template off the internet. There are trainers out there that are learning how to implement these more and more, but if you're just using a template off the internet, chances are you might be missing a lot of movements that are challenging you for real life and for preventing injury in the long run. So if you aren't doing things like lateral lunges or curtsy lunges or things that are rotational or resisting rotation, I would ask your trainer or ask for some kind of advice from a professional on how to implement those into your routine, right? Because if you're avoiding that, then you're opening yourself up for injury somewhere down the road. Yeah, hopefully that gives you a little more insight.
That's wonderful. I mean, anything you do, let's say you're in your car driving and you reach back to get something out of the back seat, you get a rotational movement, right?
Yeah.
It's a great point that, that life is not just forward and back.
So many people have like pulled something just reaching to their back seat.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned a few things that are really dear to our heart here at Ovadia Heart Health: sleep, nutrition. We focus also on stress management, all those pieces. Interesting, you say you need to get those in place before you're thinking about your fitness routine. Coming from a trainer, that's like, I need to give a high five on that one.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I emphasize that more than anything because at the end of the day, like you're kind of setting yourself up for failure in the long run, right? Your systems aren't in place. If you're trying to really plug in this workout routine, but you're not sleeping enough, you're not going to feel good and you're not going to want to continue your workouts. And it's going to make you feel like you failed, but ultimately you didn't fail. It was just the systems in place weren't serving you, right? They weren't helping you get to your goal.
All right. We'll get the question often in our the work we do. We do employee wellness programs. And if anyone listening would like to know more about the Ovadia Heart Health employee wellness programs, reach out to us, Ovadia Heart Health /wellness. They'll ask us, well, is genetics more important or is lifestyle more important? I'd never like to give a number to that, but I'd like to say there are a lot of avenues in lifestyle that you could see some improvement on. So why not invest in those? Would you agree with that?
I agree with you. And I think, honestly, in the world of information, if you don't have like a degree in reading white papers, like some of us do, you can find evidence to support like a lot, whatever you want, if you don't know how to parse through the information, right? And ultimately, like everyone that does think, like I have clients who they'll say like, oh, it's just in my family. that we are this way. And I understand my family has similar things. But ultimately, that's a little bit of a misunderstanding, because sometimes it's cultural values where, the family itself is not as active, or maybe they're more sedentary, and that could lead to other factors that end up being some kind of diagnosis down the road. But no, I agree with you.
Another thing that we'll hear frequently is, and I'm going to keep coming back to that word. I know you touched on it a little bit, but when we had our sound difficulties here, but is consistency. How would you say? How do you design consistency instead of trying to, rely on your bucket of willpower that maybe by the end of the day, that bucket of willpower is empty? Help our listeners and me even too. I'm pretty good about consistency. Help them understand how to build that in their program.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors here, right? And one is you want to stack habits on top of each other. And I'm sure, people have read or heard of books on habit stacking, atomic habits, the power of habits, different things like that. And you want to design your life in a way that things work together, right? For example, I have clients who they love TV, and the thing they want to talk about is the latest show they're watching, but they don't want to go out for a walk or do cardio or you name it. And ultimately, starting to design your life in a way that puts those things together over time helps, right? And whether that's like, hey, let's make it so that when you watch your favorite show, we also maybe take a walk on the treadmill while watching that show, or we do a 30-minute bike ride while watching that show. And we're stacking these things that you like doing and associating the thing you like with something that's kind of hard to do right now. But second, you also kind of want to identify like who you are as a person, right? Like, I am a mom of 3 who works a 40-hour job. I also like doing whatever, pickleball, but I don't work out right now and I want to. And you kind of want to like start identifying like, I want to do all these things for the long term. And are you someone that commits to those things and delivers on them and pursues them when it's tough? Or are you someone that, decides it's not important right now? And either one is okay. But ultimately, to rely on willpower alone, not the best plan. But to have an identity around like, this is who I am, and I'm trying to make a change. And these are the changes I'm going to make. I'm going to watch my favorite show when I do my cardio. Then that identity starts to change over time. And you start to be someone who does harder things that you don't want to do. And that's just one example. But ultimately, if you don't standardize the time and place of the exercise or the change, it's going to be hard because it's going to be all over the place. For example, Krisna, do you have a day and time that you always work out?
Yes, I do. Right. Full confession is for our listeners. I work out every Friday with Josh, pretty much rain or shine, meaning I've got it on my calendar, and I don't have it right here, but I'm known as the queen of the sticky note. I make a sticky note every day. Top of my sticky note is usually, what am I doing in terms of movement or exercise that day? Am I doing a strength training? Am I taking a walk? Am I having to do mini breaks because I'm inside working too much? And I personally believe if it's not on your calendar or it's not on some piece of paper to remind you, it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen by chance. That's my personal philosophy.
Correct. And that's your system. Your system is calendar or Post-it.
Right.
Like, I don't know if the listeners know, but like your system works even on bad days.
Yes.
Right. And and an example of that bad day would be when you did your workout outside when it was 110 degrees in the desert.
Yes, I
right?
did. I
So
managed.
I, I
Right.
would I would call that a bad day. I don't know if anyone else would, but I would. And that means that the systems in place were enough to get you to continue doing something even on a bad day, right? And that's ultimately what it looks like long term, right? If your system is working even on the worst days, it's a good system. So I think when someone's trying to make these changes, and if they're doing something, if they're trying a new system, they're trying post-its, they're trying calendar, and they find that it's not sticking or it's not working, instead of trying to force that same system, then maybe they should consider doing it different way, right? Whether that's, looking at how to remind themselves by alarm or you name it, right? Whatever works for anybody is the way to do it. But I think nowadays you could probably Google millions of ideas
Yeah.
to establish a new habit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's the one that works for you. That's the best one.
And I know there are many listeners here who do things with a partner, and we have a lot of individuals who will find the buddy system works for them, not for everybody, but there is a level of accountability to that works well for some individuals. I always caveat that though. What if your buddy bails? What if your buddy is not as driven or consistent as you? You got to have a backup system there, right?
Yeah, yeah, you do. You do have to have a backup system when your buddy bails. And I would always ultimately come back to a lot of what I do. Like I said before, like, is your sleep in place? Is your nutrition in place? But then, like, half of what I do is like mindset and psychology, right? So, who are you when no one's watching, right? Are you someone that continues to do the thing that you said you were going to do? Or are you going to take it easy and just take the easy road and maybe just not do it that day, right? And I would tell people, there's type A, there's type B, there's people that are like, this is the plan. I got to do this thing 100%. But if you're not feeling up to it, it's okay to do that plan, maybe a little less intense or less weight. It's okay just to move, right? Like, just to do something. That is way better at the end of the day than having done nothing.
That's a great point. Having lived a couple decades in Europe outside of the American culture, I'm generalizing grossly here, but we tend to be an all or nothing, or we have a lot. There's a good portion of the population that, well, if I can't do, the big heavy weights today, I can't do that level intensity. Well, I'm just not going to do anything. And I like this idea. Do you, for yourself, Josh, like have sort of mini workouts and then longer workouts, post, I don't know, days I'm tired workouts? Do you have like a whole range of that? I know you do for your clients, but what about for yourself?
Yeah. If you're asking, like, if there's days where I'm like, I'm not feeling it and I just modify it completely.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Completely. Right. Ultimately, like, if we're looking at a big picture of a week, I try to make sure that I do like low intensity cardio for somewhere around like 90 to 150 minutes total. I try to make sure I strength train 2 to 3 times a week. And then I try to make sure I do like high intensity training, like a sprint, like once or twice a week. That's what my overall week looks like. But there's going to be weeks sometimes where I feel worn down. And just, I would say last week, there was a day where I was supposed to do a 60-minute run or a 45-minute run. And I got to the end of my workday. I was training people since 5 a.m. It was 5 p.m., so it was a pretty long day. And I will tell you, my partner will tell you that I absolutely, the last thing I want to do is exercise after training people all day. And then I take a moment, I have a sip of like a sparkling water, a little Spindrift. And then I go, okay, I'm just going to put my shoes on. I'm going to walk out the door and I'm going to take a little jog and I'll go for as long as I can and as long as I feel, right? And I just get moving. Supposed to do a 60-minute run, just get out the door. And I just modify it. I felt good going out the door, and I went a little faster than I normally do, but I stopped at about 35, 40 minutes, right? And, dialing your intensities up and down, and you're changing your times from shortening or lengthening. Those are all acceptable things too, because at the end of the day, if your worst week still happens, it ultimately counts in the end.
That's a great example. And it sort of triggered a bell in my house about tracking. You said you had planned a 60-minute run or something. We're in the age of all kinds of wearables, from tracking our steps to tracking our sleep to
Everything.
Obviously, we're a heart health company. We're using, continuous glucose monitors, CGMs. We're doing all kinds of testing. How do you balance this, right? I've had individuals that I'm coaching health-wise that had to throw away their Oura ring because if it would tell them they had a bad night's sleep and they woke up and they felt good, they go, well, maybe I don't feel so good.
Yeah.
How do you balance the tracking with still staying in tune with your body?
Yeah, I go back and forth on this a lot, and I think what I've found is that all the trackers in the world are, again, they're only going to reflect the systems you have in place. And I think it's good for assessing the systems you have in place, right? And I try to use trackers and wearables for limited amounts of time. The only one I use consistently is like an Apple Watch, because it's like I use it for a timer and I just use it when I go running. But ultimately, I wouldn't fixate too much on the data. But for short periods of time, maybe when you're adding new things to your life and your routine, that's when I would look at it and say, like, okay, we had alcohol an hour before bed. How did that affect our sleep? We ate a heavy meal an hour or two before bed. How did that affect your sleep? As opposed to the day where you had it 5 hours before bed, right? And then, hey, how did it affect you when you had a meal 5 hours before bed and you took a walk after, right? Like what does that data look like? And it helps to show what the positive benefits are to different habits. And that really helps people solidify, like, oh, this is something I should be doing on a consistent basis. So I would liken it back to, building those habits that we talked about, and creating the system that is, one, data supported, but also, how do you feel, right? And if anyone ever gets to the point where they start looking at their data and they say, oh man, now I feel tired because it says I had a poor score or a poor sleep score, probably time to just don't look at that data for a while. Just put it away. You can still measure stuff, but you don't have to look at it. It's just going to be there in case your doctor needs to see it, or you're working with a trainer and they want to take a look at it. But yeah, that's what I would usually recommend.
And it's a good point. We know we have, and I'm generalizing, of course, but a lot of individuals who have a lot of drama or trauma with a T about the scale, about getting on the scale. And we try to encourage, obviously we're looking at metabolic health markers, but staying in tune with how's your energy, how's your mood, those things you mentioned, right? What happens if you, drink too much too late at night, or you ate, something that maybe is not giving you the best energy across the day, to keep looking at the data, but also the art, right? How you feel.
Yeah. And there are lots of people that I'll coach, like as data driven as I am and science driven as I am, and I know you are too. There's people where you just, maybe fitness trackers are not the best thing for them, but the easy question of saying, like, hey, how did you feel after having a whole food meal as opposed to having Taco Bell for dinner, right? Like they're able, when you really make someone think about it, they can tell you the difference. And, especially when it's in a short period of time, like one day after another.
Right. Since we're speaking on food here, Protein is a hot topic these days with the new dietary guidelines. Do you get a lot of questions from your clients about protein intake? And obviously, we're not here to give personal advice on that, but how about some broad, strokes for our listeners, both female and male, in terms of how you approach protein as a top level trainer?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I think people underestimate or overestimate how much they have in a day, whether it's calorie wise, whether it's grams of protein. And to be quite frank, like measuring the amount of food you have in a day I would consider it like an advanced skill. Like someone who takes a food scale out and measures their food is pretty advanced. So that's not really something I recommend to people all the time. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting 1 to 2 servings of a lean protein at every meal, you most likely you are underfed in protein. It's highly likely, depending on your size, male or female, either one. The thing I'll get the most now is people don't really need convincing on, do I need to be eating protein? Because it seems like the world's done that for them already. The thing that you hear now is, how do I get more protein, right? How do I get more protein in a day where I'm not just having protein bars and shakes all day? And I think people need to learn a little bit more about like, what is a lean protein, or what is a good source of protein, right? And ultimately, whether that's in however form you want to have it, I would always tell them like whole foods first, right? Like the bars and shakes are like, if you're on the go and it's like in supplement to your diet, we could live with it, but you shouldn't be relying on it. Most of the time people, they don't realize that it might be better to have like a lean ground beef or a steak as opposed to like chicken thighs, right? Or shrimp. They think all protein is the same. And ultimately, I think education around what is a lean protein and what is a better form of protein for you probably needs to keep going out.
Yeah, and it is the how. I mean, we encourage the whole foods protein. We want to make sure also that everyone is getting some good healthy fats along with that. Whether you're eating the fat on your whole foods protein, like on your steak or your fish, or having some butter with your eggs on that. But we love that you start with the whole foods, and then the bars and the shakes or whatever are a supplement, right? They're not the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're on the go, if you're traveling, if you're getting on a plane, if you're like, I would recommend those bars. Obviously there's some I'd say more than others, but like those kinds of things over whatever you're going to get inside of an airport, right? Or gas station.
Absolutely. We encourage the meat sticks. So, we've grown up from beef jerky. We have much better things on the market, from, turkey beef sticks to be bison beef sticks. So my bag tomorrow when I head to Pennsylvania has got boiled eggs and a carnivore bar in it. So I'm ready, because I don't want to take anything at the airport.
I love that. I want to see what happens when you open it in front of the people next to you.
Oh yeah. I always have a lot of people looking at me. That's for sure. Especially when I crack my eggs and then I, get out my little salt and pepper shakers. They think I'm completely nuts.
I love it. I love it. We need more of it. It's better than having like, a bag of crackers or Biscoff cookies on a plane. I don't know who made that deal. Those cookies aren't even good. Just saying.
No, I don't know, but somebody's getting making a lot of money on those little sacks of so-called 100 calories, but 100 calories of sugar, pretty much. I want to jump to one thing from one of our trainers, one of our health coaches, Jen. She's been coaching a long time. She had a question for you. Said, my ladies in their 70s, and I'm going to add, we have also some in our 60s saying this same question, are always looking for simple ways to get started with strength training. what would you say is best one or two strategies for, particularly in this case, females? We are the population, I would say, who has done the least amount of strength training. Again, that's a broad generalization. We're really changing that. I'm trying to be an advocate for that, since I didn't start with you till I think it was 59, maybe 60 at that time. So
You're still ahead of the curve.
I'm still ahead. What would, a lot of them say, well, should I do lighter weights, more reps, bigger weights, fewer reps? There's confusion definitely in that group. If you haven't been doing anything, where would be a good avenue to get started?
Yeah, there's a few thoughts on this, and I think the answer is always going to be it depends. First, I would always tell someone, like, can you control your body well, right? So like when you get up from a chair, are you able to get up from a chair using just your legs without momentum, without pulling yourself up or pushing yourself up, right? If you can't, that's okay, but that might be the place to start. So it might not even, strength training, people think has to involve weights the entire time. It might be just starting with your body weight. It might be just, hey, can I get up and down from this chair using only my legs 10 times, 15 times, and it feels easy, right? Or does it feel hard? And if that's where you're starting, great, right? And you can make that harder over time by adding more weights. You can make it harder over time by slowing down. You can make it harder over time by changing your stance and making your feet more narrow, bringing them together. So there's lots of ways to make things more challenging as opposed to just adding weight. But when you say, what is the best thing, heavier weight or lighter weight? Ultimately, as long as you have good form, both are going to get you a pretty good return on your effort, right? Like when you're lifting really heavy weight, it's going to challenge the body to build bone density, which is something that I would always encourage. When you're lifting lighter weight, you're kind of like creating this, like you're carving a pathway in the body to get better at doing something. So it's kind of like you're practicing a movement through repetition. And that ultimately helps for the time when you do that movement with heavier weight. So neither one is better than the other, but I would say that they work hand in hand, right? So, practicing getting up from a chair repeatedly without weight is going to make it easier for you to do a body weight squat or a goblet squat where you use weight in the future, right? So in terms of like best return on effort, I would emphasize heavier weights for the bone density, but for preventing injury down the road, I would emphasize challenging someone on their balance and their stability, doing things with one leg or smaller stances, and using like balance plates like a wall for support is going to help you in the long run as well. So hopefully that answers your question, but it was a lot of info in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And these pieces, again, I like to say the balance, the stability, coordination, they're not the sexy things. They're not, you're not, going to get some huge bicep or some kind of, picture perfect muscle in there. But when we talk about longevity, they're kind of key components. Am I correct on that? Would you agree with that?
100%. Like, to be honest with you, like the thing that's kept me away from being on social media or doing a lot of that is because what gets attention a lot of times is the things that are glitzy and not really useful for people. And ultimately, like it's the things that are quote unquote boring that are going to get you the best return, right? The balance, strengthening your hips, doing side to side movements that we talked about are the things that prevent you from falling, prevent you from getting hurt. And if you can prevent someone from getting hurt, then they're going to be able to lift more consistently. And if they can lift more consistently, they're going to get stronger, right? Ultimately. So I do believe that that those are the things that need to be pushed more on a consistent basis, rather than just what is the exercise of the week on TikTok.
Great point. I am a dinosaur. I'm going to be the one left person who's never been on TikTok. I'm going to try to keep it that way. I do the other social media forms, Instagram and Twitter. And I will say, for those of you listening, and again, if you want to know more about Josh's work, you can reach out to him. We have the link here at, I believe it's longevitytraining.net. He is top of the line. So if you're interested, reach out there. You're also on Instagram at, I believe it's Josh X Espinoza on Instagram. Yeah. So I asked a question from our coach, Jen. Coach Chris, who's in the background here, maybe is working with more of our gentlemen or the men, not only in our listeners, whether it's the group, above 40, above 50, above 60, maybe a topic there that seems is keeping it sustainable. That's what Ian mentioned, is what are the, some of your strategies for those group who might go gung-ho in January and then the 3 weeks off or workout in the way, fall, susceptible to the lack of sustainability in their strength training.
Yeah. And then would we talk about this in the perspective of having a health coach or being on their own?
Yeah. Well, from our perspective, both, I guess. We are providing a nice, stable piece of accountability, which is changing the picture.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the people who don't have one.
Yeah. I think it all goes back to those systems we talked about, right? So if you find, I see this all the time, someone starts, they come, they want to come in 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And I'm usually meeting with someone when they're just starting out, and I say, great, that sounds awesome. I love it. How many times a week were you coming in before? And maybe the answer is most likely 0. And I say, okay, going from 0 to 3 times a week in a new routine is going to be really challenging. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's probably going to be impossible to sustain, because if you've never done it, we don't know how to make it successful. So maybe let's look at 2 days out of the week or 1 day out of the week that you 100% can make it and do what you got to do. No questions asked, right? Whether that's because you got to take the kids to school. Maybe it's after you take the kids to school, or maybe it's before work, but we got to make a plan where there is 1 day out of the week that you can 100% do this exercise, do this new routine. Because if we can get that one, then we can build off of that and get the second day and the third day and the fourth day. But if we don't start with the first day, it's going to be impossible to get you on this routine. So if anyone's struggling to figure that routine out, I would tell you to first, what is the 1 day you can absolutely do your exercise routine without interruption? Is it Sunday morning? Is it Saturday morning? Is it at 5 a.m.? Is it 7 a.m.? Or is it after work at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m.? The answer is there's no right or wrong. It's the one that works for you. And I think everyone has it in their mind that if you're not doing it at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., that you're not like the best person out there, because that's what social media portrays. That's just not true.
Yeah. All super good points on that. Comes back to the old Midwest saying, well, my dad thought the cure for everything was take a walk. Another good Midwest saying is doing something is better than nothing. And that if you can commit to that, and that has stuck with me. I want to get back to just a few things we talked about, and I would encourage, if anyone listening has questions, put them in the chat. We'll get to them. You mentioned some things, and I'm looking at them, it's like doing things like one leg. I know we do some 3-dimensional training, working on those hips, if the hips are not flexible or mobile, we have some issues. Are there even things like particular muscle groups that you think people tend to leave out in the gym because they don't know what to do, or they haven't thought about the relationship and just building good, strong, mobile body as they age?
Yeah. I think I think it's becoming more popular, but working with different tools other than just a dumbbell or just a barbell is becoming better, or more commonly seen, like a kettlebell or a mace or a club. And I think introducing unconventional tools to your routine help prepare you more for everyday life, because picking things up in odd shapes and sizes and weight distributions is very common when we're like moving boxes or just moving things around, like a couch. A couch is not the shape of a dumbbell or a barbell. And ultimately, other ways to work up towards that are doing things that are like anti-rotational exercises. So like we would call them a transverse hold, or a peel-off hold, where you are standing or kneeling and you take a cable that is perpendicular to you and you hold it out in front of you. And you're basically resisting the cable from twisting you to the right or twisting you to the left. And really strengthening muscles in this way helps you pretty much prevent injury in the long run, but also increases your performance over time. And I think some of the biggest bang for your buck exercises, if you're not doing this now, I would tell you to go to YouTube or email me or just give it a little Google, is a half kneeling chop, right? A half kneeling chop using a cable exercise is going to be one of your biggest bang for your buck. It's going to activate your core, your back, your hips, as well as a half kneeling lift. And that's basically the same exercise, but flipped. And that's going to also work those same muscles, but on the other side of the body. So half kneeling chop, half kneeling lift, and a peel off hold. If you're not doing them, add them to your routine today.
Awesome. We got 3 nuggets there for anyone listening in or watching today. And add those to your routine if you're not already. A word that just again sprung out, I think there's a lot of misnomer about core strength. We get questions about that. Certainly social media doesn't help with everyone flashing their 6-pack abs and whatever, but the core is a cylinder. Mm-hmm. And so if you're only working the front part of it, mm-hmm. you've got the sides and the back.
Yep.
You're missing out on them. Broaden our knowledge base a little bit about your perspective about having a functional core when we talk about fitness and not just a 6-pack abs.
Yeah. I think the term gets used a lot, functional, right? And people might use it a lot and they might not know what it means entirely. But quite simply, all it means is, are you able to use that muscle group, that body part, the way it's intended, right? And functional core is different than core, because our classic core exercises are crunches, where we do a sit-up and we flex our stomach, right? Which is a function of the core, right? It's a function where we get ourselves up off the ground. However, functional core would say, what else does the core muscles do? And it leads to, all right, well, we're going to twist in space. We're going to like turn and run. We have to keep ourselves upright, but also turn at the same time. And that's all done by our core muscles. If we were to get up from a seated position, our core is working to keep our spine rigid, and it also flexes and extends throughout the space as we move. So it's changing as we move. So there's, in essence, functional core is something where we're teaching the body to create tension while also relax reflexively, depending on what we're doing. And all these different types of movements, moving in 3-dimensional space, prepare us, right? They help us do those things better in the real world, or in sport. And ultimately, if you're just doing crunches or leg lifts, you're training one side of the core when you're ignoring 6 others, right? And you're eventually just opening yourself up for possible injury down the road. So I would encourage you to start thinking about how else you can train that core, whether it's carrying something in your hand and doing a walk. It's called a farmer's walk. Whether it's just doing a side plank, that's a good place to start. There's lots of ways to do it.
I love that, the farmer's walk and side planks, adding those into your routine. Maybe, I know Mark Sisson's a big advocate for, doing some kind of farmer's walk, even just as a warm up, right? To hold your spine upright on that. Are there, with the start of the new year and over enthusiasm, are there any consistent sort of things that you're seeing where people, there's a lot of fear about getting hurt in the gym from particularly females, maybe. And again, I generalize there, but are there some common tips that you would say to avoid being that person who is already injured by February, since we're in January, or things that you see more frequently than others?
Yeah. I would tell everybody that when I meet with people and I talk to them, I say, hey, come this time next year in January, I don't want you to be in a place where you're starting over again. And in order to avoid that, I want you to think about everything you're doing as you're learning something new, right? You're learning a new movement, or you're learning how to move your body in a way that you haven't done before, or you might have, but you haven't done it a lot or enough to say that you've mastered it. So, like anything else you would do in your profession, you're going to consider everything we do as like practice, right? And practice doesn't mean that it has to be hard or intense or overexerting in every bout. And there might be days where it is that. There might be days where it gets hard or intense, but it doesn't have to be every day. What matters most is that we're practicing a movement, that we're making sure it feels good, looks good. And if those things are happening, then we can challenge it. Then we can say, all right, I do it well. Let me make it a little bit harder. And if it still looks good and feels good, then we can continue making it harder. But to avoid injury, you want to take that time to practice a movement, because that's what matters the most. If not, you're opening yourself up for injury and setbacks and disappointment, and ultimately just falling off the wagon. And usually that's the talk I would have with someone. And that's the talk I have with myself when I dialed my own run that was supposed to be 60 minutes down to like 35. If I would have kept going that day, I probably would have, I could have rolled an ankle or fell, or if I was just too tired to keep going. It's not the time to push harder, right? Social media will tell you otherwise, but I would encourage you to just consistency will always win out. That's the thing.
And, practice is definitely something dear to my heart. I mean, 30 plus years as a professional dancer, every dancer throughout their career, every day we start our day with a class, ballet class, most specifically. And that it doesn't matter how skilled you are, how old you are, how young you are. That is just the precedent for the day. And I think something we haven't maybe touched on, and I know we're getting close to our time, is the mindset. I think that mindset that I had as a professional dancer was every day I'm going to learn something. I'm going to learn something about how my body moves, how's my energy, how are my feet doing, ankles. To take that concept also with yourself, whether you're to the gym or you're working with a trainer, you're working at home, is you are going to practice and you are going to learn something every day.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you see it everywhere, right? You see that consistency beats talent, or all different kinds of sayings. And I think I said it before, but if you're able to just do something in practice, that makes your worst week, it still counts, right? And if your worst week still counts, you'll ultimately never quit for as long as you can.
That's a great thought. Well, as we get to our kind of closing minutes, are there any points that we didn't talk about? We got all kinds of things out there today, and you're just a wealth of knowledge. If you want to find out more about our employee wellness programs with the Ovadia Heart Health team, ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. And if you want to dive a little bit more into what Josh is doing, check out longevitytraining.net. Any also tips for our employers that are trying to encourage people to develop that strength training muscle, both the mental one and the physical one?
Yeah. Employers, so like people that are responsible for people. Well, when I have free time, I go to a speaker series, and one was by a woman who's a doctor at Yale who studies happiness. And it was frequently found that employees that had a healthy, happy life and were satisfied in all domains worked their best in their 40-hour work week, not overtime. And those companies were also found to outperform the S&P 500 over the last 25 years. So in summation, I would say that addressing one of those domains in the physical aspect and providing health benefits that address these things in a proactive way and not reactive way ultimately benefits everybody in the long run. So that's for the employer. In terms of other things to address, there are so many things to address. And this is something I've thought a lot about. And, if you found yourself having more questions than answers, I would encourage you to either send me an email or register for my newsletter. I'll be kind of writing some things about how to build your own exercise program over time. And ultimately, I believe that you should be able to do it yourself. But if you ever had questions that you needed to ask, you can also do that as well. Hopefully that answers.
And we just put up where you can email Josh, training@longevitytraining.net. And I think it's very important, a little bit back to the practice, and I know we're here, is that it doesn't matter your age. Sometimes we need to take a lesson, right? I mean, or I consider myself a fairly disciplined person at my age, but that accountability, that weekly commitment, it's huge. And I think whatever resources you have to tap into, because we can all learn from someone else. We can do a lot of things on our own. That is also great, very commendable. But I think as we age, we also need to find, and I use this term, find the best team of people that is going to support you in staying strong and healthy. And that is going to be not always a medical person. It might be someone else, but someone in that health and wellness space. Do you feel similar?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's either, do I have the time to go learn this skill entirely myself, or do I have the ability to find someone else that can help me do it faster? Because can I learn how to build a sauna? Yeah, but I probably am going to just rent or buy one myself. It would take me a lot longer.
That's a great thing. Well, Josh, it's been absolutely fabulous having you as a return guest, and I'm sure we're going to do it again sometime. Once again, if you want to reach Josh via email at training at I hope I'm getting this right, longevitytraining.net. Yes, I did.
Yep, you got it.
want to reach us at ovadiahearthealth.com/wellness. Well, all the best for 2026. And thank you for being such a fabulous guest.
Thanks for having me.